Welcome, everybody, to the Traveling Pilates Teacher Podcast. I'm here today with Jess. She is a Pilates teacher in the United States around the Chicagoland area. She's been a Pilates teacher for a couple years now. So welcome, Jess. Welcome to the Traveling Pilates Teacher
Thank
Podcast.
you so much, Kristie. I appreciate you asking me to chat.
Yes, well, we are happy to have you. I've known Jess for, how long's it been? Like 3 years now?
Yeah, something like that.
A little bit more than 3 years. So, and actually, I used to work for Jess. She was our studio manager as well as our teacher and leader. So I've known her for a good number of years. And she's a wonderful human and a even better Pilates teacher. So that's why I definitely chose to interview her. Plus, I wanted to get her perspective of what it's like to teach in the United States Pilates, because I think, obviously every teacher is different, every teaching style is different, every human's different, every student's different, and the countries are different. So it's nice to compare what it's like to be in the United States to other countries. So thank you again. So let's start, just tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get onto your Pilates journey? What inspired you? Things like that.
Okay, sure. So I was a stay-at-home mom actually for a while, and my son was born prematurely, and I ended up just deciding to be at home with my kids for a while. So when I decided to get back into the working world, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. As a child, I always wanted to be a teacher. I thought a classroom teacher. But after I went through school myself, I realized I did not have the backbone for that. So I was kind of racking my brain. What am I going to do with myself now once my kids got into school? And I was introduced to a little fitness organization where I could very easily get certified from home, start to teach some classes, that kind of thing. It was a similar fitness modality maybe to yoga. And so I went through that. Loved it, started to run into students who had questions that I didn't have answers for. So I decided to get a little more education in that area because I was loving it so much. And I got my personal trainer certification through ACE, American Council of Exercise.
Okay.
And then just from there, trying to figure out where was a good fit for me. And in our community, it was actually challenging for me to find a place to work.
Yeah.
Because by this point, I'm like close to middle age. I'm a mom. I don't have like the svelte body of,
right.
like whoever. Mm-hmm. And it was challenging. But I did do some privates for a while. I worked at a gym for a while. But I still felt like I hadn't quite found my niche. Mm-hmm. And one day I came across a Pilates studio called Club Pilates, mm-hmm. and they had a free intro session, and I had never experienced Pilates in that way before. So I decided to go try it out. I loved it. I wanted to be involved, but couldn't afford it.
Yeah, I know.
So kind of went by the wayside for a while until a couple years later, I was hunting for a part-time job. And just kind of came across that this same studio was hiring for the front desk. And I just thought, perfect. Then I can kind of get my toe into that world. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did, and ended up, long story short, starting teacher training while I was there. Jumped into that management role as well, but went through the Club Pilates teacher training program, mm-hmm. and have been teaching ever since I got certified and loving it.
Yeah. Well, what an interesting journey it takes you. And I really, truly think what's meant to be, it opens those doors and it's just all of a sudden appears. And so It's meant to be. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Good one. We're glad that you took that journey too, because we would have never met that way. So good. So how would you describe your teaching style and your philosophy when it comes to Pilates?
So I had to think about that question a little bit. My teaching style, I would say, is I try to make the classes fun. Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer in if you don't like it, you won't stick with it.
Yes.
So I want the students to have fun. Yeah. So I kind of just let my personality shine through a little bit and act goofy sometimes, crack jokes.
Yep.
I also would say that as far as the class itself, the fitness portion, I believe strongly in progressions. Mm-hmm. So I like to start the class with maybe a really basic move and then layer on progressions from there so they can kind of decide, like, how do I feel today? Right. Do I want to push myself a little bit today, or do I need to stick with the first, movement, that mm-hmm. kind of thing? Because I think as people get stronger, they need options. They need to know, like, how do I continue to get stronger? I also like to work the same muscle groups, maybe even more than once during a workout, because I like to build endurance, especially with Pilates, having a focus on the core and posture muscles and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would just say ultimately my goal with every class is to generate some sweat and some smiles. Definitely.
Yes, I agree. And I think it's so important to have your personality come through, because it does engage the students and it does make them want to come back to you versus just always just shooting out commands and shooting out cues and, and not having that personality come through. So I think it works really well. You're doing really well, because your classes are always full and have wait lists and stuff. So obviously it works out well for everybody. So good. So since you're also that certified personal trainer and have experience in teaching other forms of fitness, what sets Pilates apart from anything else, from that yoga, from going to the gym and just, killing yourself and sweating? Because I've done that, and I did it all the way in through maybe like my mid 40s. And then I decided, like, oh my gosh, I'm killing my body. Like, my body is not doing well here. And so, what kind of sets Pilates apart from all of the rest of the stuff?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the equipment. Which I think is super fun. Because I like variety too. I'm a person who tends to get bored easily. So I like to have a lot of variety, and the equipment allows us to do that. Maybe even if the exercise is similar, when you move from one piece of equipment to another, that makes it a little different, gives that little tweak to keep things interesting. So that's the biggest thing, I think. But also for me, like I said, when I was first drawn to it, I was getting a little older and thinking, like, okay, I've been doing, like you said, I've been doing kickboxing. I've been doing, all these things. And at some point I might not be able to do those anymore, or at least not at the intensity I was.
Right.
So what kind of fitness can I do that I can do for life? Something that I can continue that will still keep me mobile, functional, strong, all of those things, but maybe like lower impact. So that was another thing that I think really sets it apart and that drew me to it as well. And then I, of course, love the breath work has been big for me.
Yes.
I actually had a pretty bad case of COVID, like after I was already teaching. And that was huge in my recovery too. Because I ended up just getting the first stages of COVID pneumonia. And as soon as I was done with my treatment and everything, I started back with Pilates very slowly.
Yes.
But the breath work was huge, and just being able to reconnect to taking those big breaths, working on that lung capacity again. And I really love that. And then, of course, the mind-body connection, which I know you might hear it in other forms of fitness, but I think truly in Pilates, when you combine everything that I just said and put it with mind body, it's amazing, because it's a form of fitness where you really have to focus on what you're doing to get the form correct, to match the breathing with the movement if you can, all those kinds of things. It's so good, especially in our day and age of just like distractions and things moving so fast. Like this really slows you down and really reconnects you and recenters you, I think.
Yeah. And I think this whole concept of mindfulness is really coming full circle in everything. You see it in the corporate world, you see it in the fitness world, you see it in, everyday life, and kids are learning about it in school. So Pilates just really tends to lend favorably to that whole mindfulness and that whole mind-body connection. So I think you're 100% right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And really, too, what I love to circle back a little bit about what you were saying, I love the fact that Pilates can be for anybody. You can be a teenager in great shape, because teenagers, not all, but most teenagers, are size 0, size 2, not all, but many. And it can be early 20s, ladies that haven't had a baby yet, but maybe they're getting their body in that shape for wanting to have a baby, and then ladies that are starting to go through menopause, and that mid-age, those moms that have had babies and they want to get back to that. And then you've got the older crowd ladies too that have been maybe working out for, years, and they're in their late 70s, even early 80s. We see people, and
Yes.
they're able to do it. And I think just moving is really the key. And that's what's so great about Pilates, because especially on the reformer, you're on your back, your feet are on the foot bar. So everybody gets on their back, even if you're 80 something, you lay down, and
Yes.
and I just really give everybody so much credit. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, what stage of fitness you're in, Pilates will help you, I think, with anything.
Yes, agreed.
So I know. So perfect. So we'll get off that tangent, but we both love Pilates and we both see the benefits. And so I know everybody listening does as well. So perfect. So what are some common misconceptions, though, that people have about Pilates? I know that we just saw recently that Saturday Night Live skit. So
Yes.
And that was, kind of funny, but I think a misconception a lot of times. So talk a little bit about the misconceptions.
I would say being a sales rep at the studio where I worked and working at the desk helped me to get a better handle on this question, because we try to connect with people before they come in, to learn a little bit about them, see if they have questions, things like that. A lot of times, the two biggest things that I hear, one is, oh, it's kind of like yoga, right? No. Yes and no.
Yeah. You breathe.
Right.
We focus on the breath.
That's right. Breath, mind, body work, those are similar. Full body, hopefully, if you have a good, full rounded yoga class. But no, it's not the same. Obviously, with the equipment makes it very different. The focus on the core makes it very different, actually. And it really, when you get down to it, yoga at its root is actually more of a religious rooted fitness, where Pilates is not, just very physical, again, focused on the breath work and the movements of the body and things like that. The other thing that I hear a lot is, oh, because it's like stretching, right? It's a lot of stretching. I'm like, well,
we stretch every day.
We do stretch, but that is not the point of Pilates.
Yes.
So I do think, in my experience, those are the two biggest things where people kind of have a misconception. I mean, maybe they saw a video where people were doing a more low-key movement and that they just think that that's what it is. But they quickly find out when they come to class.
Right. It's a little different.
They're going to be working hard.
Yeah.
So.
And I do think, what's out there, I had an old Pilates tape from years ago, on the mat at home. And it does incorporate a lot of those kind of yoga-ish type of moves. So I can see where people would think they're very similar. And even when you go on YouTube and you get some videos just from home, on YouTube, mat Pilates, and it's different, but throw yourself onto a reformer. It is nothing like yoga. I mean, you both breathe and we focus on the breath, and like you said, but that's about it. So.
Exactly. Yes.
Perfect. So we have all those classes where there's that advanced student, and then you've got many intermediate students, and then you've got the person that, this is my first class. Tell me, how do you handle a 50-minute workout with that advanced student, that intermediate student, and that first timer all in one class? How do you handle that?
So I think I kind of take it back to your teaching style question. I like to teach with progressions. So it can be challenging, admittedly, but I like to always start everybody with a really basic movement and then offer options to add on. If you're feeling strong today, add this, that kind of thing, so that hopefully everybody is getting the workout that they need for their level of fitness. But at the same time, depending on what class you're teaching, I know at the studios where I teach, we actually have levels of classes. So people kind of should know what they're getting into when they sign up for a class, right? This is going to be a more beginner class or that type of thing. I always also encourage my students, whenever you're doing a basic movement, if you really focus on the form and put your mind to the muscle, you're still going to get a lot out of it without having to do some crazy advanced level exercise, right? But again, I like to just offer those options. And then I would say the trickiest part is, let's say your beginner needs a little help with their straps or their, whatever, and you kind of get distracted while you're teaching. I'll try to just throw out, keep going, or,
do 100 of these.
I know, exactly. So hopefully the people who are a little more advanced, you don't have to explain as much.
Right.
So, but it can definitely be tricky.
It is.
You have those situations.
Yeah. And it is. And I know in the United States, the major franchise that you and I both have worked for, they do have them leveled, but a lot of the private studios don't have leveled classes, and a lot of places around the world don't have level. It's just come to Pilates. And so I think that's a bigger challenge for people working just at those smaller studios or around the world versus in the United States where we have them a little bit leveled. So yeah, it is hard, but I do like the fact that you start out with that basic level and then progress. I think that's really good advice for people listening that do have that struggle with that same problem. So good. So then let's flip it here. What's a memorable success story that you'd like to share? You've got a client that maybe struggled and then saw some success. So do you have one example? I'm sure you have many, but can you pinpoint it to one example that?
Yes. So I actually had one person that comes to mind. I won't share her name, of course, but she was coming to classes for quite a while, building her strength, but she was having a lot of pain in her hip and went to the doctor. It turns out she actually needed a hip replacement. So this was obviously something that was stemming from years of issues and things like that. But the doctor did say, please continue with your Pilates while you're preparing. Right. And so I took her on as private client and worked with her for probably a couple of months before her surgery. Yeah. Which was great because then I could focus on specific things with her, strengthen her, get her ready so that hopefully her recovery would be smoother. And it was actually amazing. She emailed me while she finished the sessions. She had a few left over. She went to have the surgery. And then while she was on her recovery, she emailed me and said, you will not believe, the doctors are just amazed at how strong I am and how quickly I'm recovering in physical therapy and all this stuff. It was just so encouraging to hear that. Yeah. And how they were really impressed with her because they were saying normally we would expect your recovery to take this long, but wow, you're just breezing through all this and you're doing great. So that is always so fulfilling when you get to help somebody in a specific way like that and you actually get to hear about it. It's
right.
Really nice.
Yeah. Do you still see her? Does she still come?
I do, yes.
Oh, perfect. Good.
She's back to regular classes now and knows, the movements to avoid, but just strong as ever.
Oh, good. Well, everyone loves a good success story.
Yes.
So yes, well, thank you for sharing that. So, with those successes does come some challenges. So what are some challenges that you do face, as this Pilates teacher? What do you face?
So some of the little things that come to mind is something I mentioned already, let's say there's a distraction in class or, that kind of thing. Occasionally you get the random person who tells you about a pain or an injury or a diagnosis and you're like, oh man, what do I do for that again?
Yeah. Let me go research that real quick.
Yeah, that can be definitely challenging sometimes if you're, not, if it's not something common or you don't have a lot of experience working with. Right. I also would say challenges would be making sure that you don't get burnt out too quickly, or even just not burnout per se, but just take care of yourself. Yeah. A lot of times it's almost like you always hear about nurses and doctors, right? They give and give and give and care for others, but they don't really take care of themselves. Right. I think that can be true for Pilates instructors as well. Sometimes we're so busy teaching, and then we forget to do things to take care of ourselves. For example, as I'm getting ready to step into teaching more often, I'm already realizing that I need better footwear. So I need to do a little research and some shopping and, just make sure that I can teach, several classes in a row without having to deal with pain. Things like that.
That's a real thing because we're on hard floors and we're not on these cushy mats and
exactly.
Wow, yeah. Good footwork is okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes, good footwork is definitely one of them.
Yeah. And I would say, I guess the other thing that comes to mind is just staying fresh with your choreography. Kind of, obviously there's movements that don't change that are pretty basic or the basics, the foundations of Pilates. But we always like to find fun ways to keep it fresh and things like that. And sometimes that can be a challenge, especially if you teach a lot. You can almost feel like you're doing the same thing all the time. But so I would say that's definitely something that can be a challenge. And if you're teaching a lot of classes, do you have time to do that?
Yeah.
Little things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I agree. Staying fresh is, because I think the members like it. They don't like to do the same thing, which I don't know who does. That then they get bored and they lose their interest. So yeah, definitely staying fresh. And I would agree that is a challenge. So perfect. So, what do you think is the most important qualities for a successful Pilates teacher?
So I believe that in order to teach an exercise and teach it well, ideally you would have experienced that exercise yourself, right? So I like to practice moves before I teach them. I think that it helps as a teacher to be able to give the right cues, to know what people should be feeling, things like that. Occasionally, obviously, maybe you've got a really super advanced client and you're going to take them through some really cool moves that maybe you can't do, but that's okay. You're there to spot them. But overall in your group classes, I think that a good Pilates teacher will have actually done the exercises that they're teaching. I also think it's really important for the teacher to be teachable, maybe to receive feedback, whether it's from a student or a boss, to just, be moldable and open, just, in case there's something that you're kind of closed-minded on that you didn't realize.
Yeah.
And then definitely being approachable, being kind, because like you said before, with the students, you've got to be able to connect with them in some way. They don't want to listen to a robot,
right.
or be barked at by a drill sergeant, right? So I think it's really important for Pilates instructors to be able to connect with people well and be genuine about it.
Yes. 100%.
Because they can tell.
Yes. Yes.
They can tell if it's not genuine.
Yes. And I think that is what sets apart the great instructors from the good instructors, is that connection that you have with people, because people can give cues and people can give, directions well and tell you what you should be feeling and stuff. But it's that connection that you make with people, I think, that really makes you that great instructor versus a good instructor. So I agree with that. See, so well, good. So what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that Pilates teachers make? Either new, seasoned, veterans, you decide. Or whatever the biggest mistakes you think they make.
Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit already, but I would say maybe taking on too much too soon. A lot of times when we get started, I've seen it happen before. People are so excited and so just loving it. I'm going to teach all day, every day. And then suddenly they're like, wait a minute. Some people are built for it, but some people are not. So I would just say, maybe take it slow when you first get started. And then another thing that I do notice in this industry is a lot of comparison.
I agree.
Yeah. Maybe you see another teacher, or even if it's someone online or someone in person, and you kind of like compare yourself to them. I think that could be dangerous because, in life in general, that can be dangerous. We want to be our own selves.
Right.
Be comfortable in our own skin and in our own personalities and who we are. But there's a lot of comparison, I think, that goes on. And I do think also that there's a lot of taking things too seriously sometimes. So we always have this joke at our studio. Well, it's not really a joke, but it helps us keep the mood light, is, you know what? It's just Pilates.
It is.
It's if someone's upset about something, it's probably not that important. Right. Usually they're upset about something like the lighting or the music or,
right.
whatever. Or they think you should do this exercise or that, whatever. And it's kind of like, just take a breath, take a moment. It's okay.
Yes.
Don't take it personally. People have their opinions, but you can even tell them it's just Pilates.
Exactly. And Pilates is a happy place.
Exactly.
It is a happy place. I think people come to Pilates happy, or if they're not happy when they come, they get happy pretty quickly.
Yes.
Because that's what it is. Yes. And I do think what you said, those mistakes are real. I do think that a lot of people compare their teaching style to other teacher styles, or you see one teacher that's successful, meaning her classes are always booked and people are waiting for her or him, because there are male teachers, so I don't want to just single women out. That I think people do compare, and because they want that filled class. Not too many people, I think, want just one or two people in their class, maybe,
Right.
Maybe, but I don't think. And so I think that comparison is real, and I think it can be very dangerous because everybody's style is different, and you do have that unique style, and you need to find that unique style. So
right. And in order to keep that happy place, the instructor has to be happy. It's kind of like that little saying, happy wife, happy life, or like the mom, determines the happiness of the family, or whatever the little sayings are.
Yeah.
I think it kind of fits with that too. Like if the instructor's having a bad day, they're going to pick up on it.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing, right?
So, I mean, it's hard sometimes, but we have to try to leave our lives at the door, leave our emotions at the door, and just remember that people are coming here to give themselves some self-care.
Yeah.
Maybe they're coming to do it physically, or maybe it's socially.
Right.
I mean, I see a lot of people who you can just tell they're lonely.
Yes.
And they like to come to the group classes because they make friends, or even if they don't make close friends, they're around other people. They're doing something together. It's a community.
Right.
And so I think that it's important for us to remember that and stay focused on those things.
Yeah. And you're right, because a lot more people are working from home these days. And if you live alone, you work from home, you're pretty lonely, and some people love that isolation, but some people need and crave that other human, even close contact with them. So I agree with that. That's a good one. That's a good point. So thanks for bringing that up. So I know you've been a teacher for a while, and you've been a new teacher. You've worked with many new teachers. You've been an experienced teacher. So what do you think is the best piece of advice you have for a new teacher? Because I know you see a lot of new teachers. What's that one piece of advice you'd have for them?
I would say if I was to make it an overall statement, it would be keep up with your own self-care. But to get more specific, I would say keep up with your own Pilates practice. A lot of times that can get lost. We touched on it a little bit already. You're teaching so much that you stop taking classes yourself, or stop exercising yourself if you're super busy. I think it's really important for us to practice our own self-care for the physical benefits, of course. Not that we want to project that a certain body type is what we're aiming for, because I'm definitely not into that. Right. But we want to just project a healthy lifestyle to our students, but we also want to have it for our own benefits.
Yes.
And also just keeping a life balance with all of that as well. So I would just say, like I said, keep up with your own practice. Make sure that you're doing something for yourself, for your health. And also, like a little side note to that, I would say, while I'm discouraging you from comparing yourself to others, I would encourage you to learn from others.
Yes.
So take classes from other instructors, grab little nuggets, and oh, I like that cue. I might use that in my next class, or, oh, this exercise, I've never tried it this way before, things like that. Always make sure that you're open to learning yourself. I think the best teachers are good learners.
I agree.
So
even though teachers make the worst students, but if you can be a lifelong learner, I think that is just really the key there too, because like you said, you can always pick up a nugget, even if it's an instructor that you are like, she's not really my favorite. If I had to pay, I may not come to this instructor, but it doesn't matter. You always pick up something.
Definitely.
If it's a word, way to cue it, a different move, like you said. I mean, I 100% agree with that, because you just learn from everybody. And then there's those instructors you just want to wait, can I just copy down your whole flow because it was so good?
Yeah, exactly.
So you get best of both worlds. But I agree. Just get out there and just take a class, even if it's an online class that you are taking, so just so that you can get that practice. I've been not practicing for the past month just because I'm getting ready to move, and life's just getting really busy, and my body feels it. Like I'm sitting on this reformer. Those of you can't see us, but I'm on a reformer and Jess is on the chair. I want to just put my feet on this bar and push back. So
you should when we're done.
I know, but I have to get home and have so many other appointments. But yes, but yes, that is great advice. I agree. And so thank you so much for joining us. It's been, really insightful. I love all the information that you have. I love talking to you about Pilates. We've talked about many things, but I love talking to you about Pilates. It's been such a pleasure to have you and have you here with me. So continued success in your teachings and whatever else you do in the future.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So tune in next time for another episode of The Traveling Pilates Teacher. I'm going to be talking to people overseas, starting in Morocco, speaking with Pilates teachers, Pilates students, as well as some studio owners. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and tune in to us next time.